All right, we have had a couple more join, so hopefully we'll slowly get started and maybe some more will join as we start. So my name is Sarah Marchand. I'm the Community Development Division Director for the City of Nashua, and thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Heritage Rail Trail East project. This project has been an ongoing project for more than 15 years in the city, starting with the Heritage Rail Trail West, which heads from City Hall down to Will Street. And this is the eastern portion, which our engineering team, CMA, will explain tonight, heads from Main Street down to East Hollis Street, close to the terminating end near our future rail station at 22 Crown Street. Just a couple housekeeping items before I introduce the team tonight. The webinar is being recorded, so please be aware of that. All of the attendees, both your audio and video is off at this time. At the end, we may, depending on how many are here and how many questions, be able to turn that on. If at any point in time you have questions, please use the Q&A box that you can see on the either bottom or top of your screen, depending on where your toolbox of options is in Zoom. If you click on the Q&A, you can write in a question. We can actively respond in writing to you, but certain ones, if it seems very relevant or more people are interested in it, we will respond to live at the end as well. So the Q&A box is definitely your best way to communicate with us. And with that, I will introduce Julie Chismus, is the city's long range and transportation planner.
There.
There's Julie, thank you. And then the CMA engineering team that will do most of the presenting tonight, starting with Jason Bodette.
How you guys doing tonight?
Jennifer Martell.
Good evening.
Hi, Jennifer. Liam Kalak.
Hi, good evening.
And, oh, hi, Liam, thank you. And Sam Fortier.
Hey, everyone.
All right, I will turn it over to you, Jason, and your team.
All right, so tonight what we're going to do is we're going to have the second public meeting required in the LPA process for the Heritage Rail Trail East project. Some of the stuff you're going to see tonight is going to be similar to what you saw at the local concerns meeting, but we want to give a full review of everything. And ultimately what we're going to present is the project that's going to be put forward to DOT and what this project is going to be developed into and actually go into engineering design. So first is a quick overview of the presentation. We're going to review the purpose and need of the project area and potential issues to be addressed, project development, public informational meeting outcomes, alternative analysis, the proposed action, the preliminary schedule going forward, and then we'll take public input. So the purpose and need of this project is the Heritage Rail Trail project was started in the late 2000s to reduce congestion along East and West Hollis Streets, one of the most congested corridors in the city of Nashua and the Nashua region, by providing an alternative bicycle and pedestrian route through the heart of the city's most densely populated neighborhood. The purpose of this project is to complete the construction of the Heritage Rail Trail East. The description of the project is the project would extend the bike and pedestrian trail from the Heritage Rail Trail West terminus at Main Street in downtown Nashua and continue the trail to East Hollis Denton Street intersection. Once completed, the trail will provide an alternative route for bicycles and pedestrians to connect to downtown Nashua and the transit center with the 25 Crown Street park and ride and future commuter rail train station without requiring a single occupant vehicle trip on this heavily congested corridor. So this is a piece of the presentation we had shown you previously from our early analysis of the project. This is the basic project area going from Main Street and heading east to the intersection with Denton Street and East Hollis Road. For ease of discussion, we have broken it up into 5 sections. The first from Main Street to Quincy Street, the second from Quincy Street to Spruce Street, the third from Spruce Street to Commercial Street, the fourth being the Commercial Street Bridge, and the 5th segment going from the Commercial Street Bridge to the East Hollis Denton Street intersection. I'm now going to go over a few pictures of the existing conditions just so everyone can kind of get a little acclimated. The first picture here is on Main Street looking east towards Spring Street. The next one is looking from Spring Street towards Quincy Street. The next is on Quincy Street looking west towards Spring Street. This is also on Quincy Street looking east towards Mason. This is behind the Family Dollar looking east. This is the shared area of the trail. This is on Mason Street looking east towards Spruce Street. This is along Howard Street, right behind the Wendy's. This is behind Fisher Auto Parts looking west, and you can see Howard Street on the right side of the screen. This is behind the fire station looking west. This is from Main Street looking north towards the Commercial Street Bridge. This is behind Rapano Stone looking west towards the fire station. This is behind the Henry Hangar building looking east towards Temple Street. And this is at the East Hollis Denton intersection near the terminus of the trail looking northwest back on the trail. So on October 9th, 2019, we held a local concerns meeting, which presented the broad project outline and objectives. We received comments from attendees, and some of the comments and questions included, direct Main Street crossing option for the trail, ADA accessibility for the trail. Another concern was safety, crime, and vandalism. Trail lighting was a desire. Control of litter on the trail. Options and discussion of what the trail surface would be. Availability of neighborhood connections to the trail. Incorporation of cultural and historic influences into the design of the trail. What type of right-of-way issues would be encountered with building the trail, and would parking be able to be provided for use of the trail going forward. Here's an overview of the project development of the trail. We are currently in the engineering study. We have completed the local concerns meeting. Based on all the input that we just discussed, we have completed the alternative and conceptual design analysis. We have also completed all the survey, which brings us to holding the proposed action meeting. Once the proposed action meeting is complete, we will move on and complete the engineering study, and we will continue to work on the draft environmental document. At that point, we'll submit everything to DOT and hopefully get authorization to continue the project into preliminary design, final design, and ultimately construction. So as part of the alternative analysis and the local concerns meeting, we looked at a variety of things that were brought up and broke the project down into various alternatives to look at, whether it be totally for the project or individual portions of the project. Based on this, we came up with a number with the alternatives before you. The first being a no-build alternative. The second being alternative number 1, which was the construction of the basic rail trail, which will have trail elements, landscape elements, and a basic bridge retrofit. Alternative 2, which will have an enhanced bridge retrofit. Alternative 3 includes a bridge replacement. Alternative 4 is the direct Main Street crossing. Alternative 5 are enhanced crossings. And alternative 6 will present enhanced landscaping options. So the first option is the no-build alternative. The no-build alternative, no improvements along the corridor would be made. People would continue dependence on motor vehicle usage along East Hollis Street. This would delay the completion of the Nashua Heritage Rail Trail. It does not suffice the purpose and need of this project. Based on this alternative is not recommended. Alternative 1, as I said, is broken into 3 different portions, which would be the trail elements, the landscaping elements, and the basic bridge retrofit. I'll go over the trail elements, and then I'll turn it over to Jen to go over the landscaping elements, and finally Liam to go over the basic bridge replacement. So under the trail elements, we would construct a 10-foot wide paved trail with 2-foot wide gravel shoulders. The section between Quincy and Mason Street would feature a colorized trail surface. It would be slightly narrower than the rest of the trail, probably 8 feet due to the current easement we have. We would retain the concrete sidewalk along Howard Street behind Wendy's. A divider island would be installed at Main Street to help defer trail traffic either north or south onto Main Street. And we would formalized ADA compliant crossings would be installed at Spring Street, Quincy Street, Mason Street, and Spruce Street. One of the things to note is due to the former use of the land of the as a railroad corridor, the soil in the area does present contamination and will be appropriately dealt with during construction. I'm going to give a quick overview of the graphics of each of these locations. So you can see in the first segment here, we will be installing a divider island at the intersection with Main Street. This will be used to defer bicycle and pedestrian traffic either north or south onto the Main Street sidewalk. This will help discourage direct crossing of the trail and push people either northward to a northward destination or southward to the existing pedestrian crossing where they can safely cross and then continue on the western part of the trail. Bollards will be installed at the ends, and the crossing of Spring Street will feature ADA compliant ramps and formalized pedestrian crossings. The next segment from Spring to Quincy is similar to the first. Once again, bollards at each end to prevent any type of non-bicycle or pedestrian usage, tying into existing sidewalk networks with ADA compliant sidewalks and formalized crossings of both streets. The next segment is a shared segment that runs between Quincy Street and Mason Street. The city currently has an easement in this location, which will allow us to build the trail on land that it doesn't presently own. We won't need any right-of-way impacts to do this. At this time, what we are looking to do is look at the surface in the area, potentially provide an updated surface so that it is smooth, easy to walk for all users and types. And currently, we're looking to install a colorized surface to it to highly differentiate it from the rest of the alleyway. And we believe right now that we're looking at potentially just a painting of the trail similar to what you see on a bike lane with a green color. And it also presents an opportunity for the infusion of some local art. We've seen this in other places where local artists will paint median islands or crosswalks or something like that. So it'd be a good opportunity to potentially look into including that as well. Once again, formalized ADA compliant crossings on Quincy and Mason. The next segment goes between Mason and Spruce. We'll be installing, due to the open nature in this area, we'll be installing some corridor delineation fence in this area. Formalized crossings once again, bollards on each end. Jen's going to go over a little bit more in detail the fence and what types of fence we're looking to put in. There are a few other areas that I may have not mentioned that will be getting some fence as well. In the area along Howard Street, this sidewalk is in very good condition, and we do have some constraints in this area, and upon analysis we determined that it was probably best to keep the sidewalk as is and then connect into the trail. Heading easterly behind Fisher Auto Parts and then heading over towards Commercial Street, we'll have bollards at the end to prevent non-bike and pedestrian access. In the area near the fire station, we'll be installing privacy fence so that the fire department can continue to use their property behind the building. We have a number of options that we are looking at for the bridge. In this alternative one, it's going to be a basic bridge retrofit, which Liam's going to get into more detail. As we continue easterly, the trail will continue behind Rapano Stone. Once again, continuing easterly, heading towards Henry Hangar. And finally terminating at the East Hollis Denton Street intersection. Fencing will also be installed along the northern side of the trail, as this is still an active rail line and we want to ensure safety of users of all ages and use types. With that, I am going to turn it over to Jen so that she can just go over the landscaping elements of alternative one.
Thank you, Jay. My name is Jennifer Martell. I'm a landscape architect and I work at Ironwood Design Group. And I'm just going to talk quickly about some of the landscape elements along the Heritage Rail Trail. First and foremost is the lighting for this project. What we heard from the local concerns meeting and also from city staff is that the project should certainly be well lit. And to kind of create some consistency visually and also for ease of maintenance for the city, it's been decided that we are going to match the style of the existing poles that are on the western portion of the trail. So you can see here, there's a picture of the existing light poles, and the new poles are gonna look essentially the same. The luminaire, the lighted portion, is a 60-watt LED, so it's a low energy usage fixture. 400K color temperature. And these lights are going to be spec'd out with a occupancy sensor, which means that if there's no one on the trail, they're going to be dimmed down. And then when people are on the trail, they will brighten up. And this is a both an energy usage savings, and it's also helpful for security reasons, because then you kind of know, even if you're not on the trail, if you see the bright light, you know that there are people there. And the light distribution that we're working with is about 1.5 average foot candles, which is nice and bright for the trail, but it's also not going to spread light to neighboring properties. And finally, I just wanted to mention that because of the full cutoff nature of this luminaire, it is dark sky friendly. Next, please. As Jay mentioned, there are a few locations along the corridor where we've identified the need for some fencing. There's essentially 3 types of fencing that would be installed. The first is what we're calling corridor delineation. And this would be a wood fence, similar to what you see in the photo. And essentially this is going to be located in places where we have an existing parking lot adjacent to the rail trail to prevent vehicles from accidentally or intentionally driving on the rail trail. We also have, as Jay mentioned, a privacy fence that will be going in behind the fire station. And then the last fence is what I'm calling a security fence. It's kind of more of a safety fence so that people don't accidentally wander onto the existing rail tracks, rail line. Next, please. And finally, I just wanted to mention quickly the planting that we're looking at for this corridor. There's not a lot of opportunity for planting. One of the biggest changes that I think people will notice is actually the clearing of overgrown and invasive vegetation. You can tell by some of the photographs that Jay showed is some of the areas along this corridor are quite overgrown and weedy, and that will all be cleaned up. And we will be planting canopy trees along the corridor in specific locations that are going to help to both provide shade and delineate the edge of the corridor, provide some aesthetic value, and mitigate poor air quality. Next, please.
Hi, again, I'm Liam Callock. I'm one of the structural engineers working on this project with CMA Engineers. For alternative 1, this includes the basic bridge retrofit, which utilizes the existing steel bridge over Commercial Street. Prior to moving to this phase, CMA Engineers, we inspected the bridge in October of 2019 and found it to be in generally serviceable condition for this proposed use. Noted substandard elements during that inspection were the clearance between the bottom chord of the bridge and the roadway. The bridge has 2 support piers, which are steel, and they're located just off the curb, at the curb line of the roadway. And so for this alternative, a 10-foot wide deck would be constructed over the existing bridge. The existing bridge is not 10 feet wide, but as shown in the graphic on the right side of the slide, a timber superstructure would be built up to provide a 10-foot clear width such that it would match the trail sections to the east and west of this crossing. The deck would be outfitted with pedestrian railing, bicycle railing of suitable height for both those user types, as well as meeting ADA and other applicable codes. One of the other components that was noted during the bridge inspection was that the bearings at either end of the bridge, again, are steel, and over the lifespan of the bridge thus far have corroded significantly, and those would be proposed to be replaced prior to retrofitting the bridge. Next slide, Jay, please. So to summarize alternative 1, it completes the Nashua Heritage Rail Trail, suffices the project purpose and need that Jay described earlier. The cumulative element costs for this alternative currently exceed the project budget, but the alternative is being considered. So as an alternative to the bridge portion of alternative 1, the alternative 2 is similar in many aspects, where it utilizes the existing steel bridge structure of Commercial Street. The railing, the proposed railing would be similar. The need to replace the bearings would be similar. The major difference here is that instead of relying on the interior steel components of the bridge, a more robust timber deck would be constructed to span from the between the two exterior girders. This would the benefit of this is that it eliminates the need to rely on the numerous interior steel components that transfer the load out to those exterior beams anyways. And what this does is by not relying on those, it reduces the ongoing maintenance required for the bridge, because only the exterior girders at that point are the structural members. This meets the project need by connecting the two adjacent sections. Similar to the previous alternative, this element does exceed the current project budget, and however, this alternative is still being considered. Thank you, Jay. So for alternative 3, this one differs from alternative 1 and alternative 2 for the bridge options. This would involve a full replacement of the bridge. So the steel superstructure, the existing steel superstructure and substructure components would be removed, with the existing granite retaining walls / abutments remaining in place. Those granite abutments would then be used to support a new bridge that would span the full length of the crossing without the need for interior supports, as the existing bridge does have. There's 3 options that we have posed for a new structure type. First of which is a precast, or a set of precast concrete beams, box beams. The second being precast double T beam, and then the third being a prefabricated metal steel truss. All 3 of these options would have similar railing options to what was described for alternative 1 and alternative 2. Again, this would meet the needs of the project by connecting the east and west sections. One item to note on this would be that with alternative 3 involving the full removal of the existing bridge, we're currently looking at and would need to consider, it would require more involved and extensive historical evaluation of the existing structure and coordination with the proper authorities as that option gets considered.
Hey, Dan. I just want to jump in for a second. We had a question that I think would be great if we could answer it while we're still looking at the bridge components. And that question was, what is the expected lifespan of the bridge under the basic bridge retrofit? And is it different than the enhanced bridge retrofit? And I'd even throw it out a lot, one step farther. And what would the expected lifespan be of a new bridge?
Yep. So for alternative 1 and alternative 2, those both rely on the existing steel structure with timber components over them. For alternative 1, where it is, it's not spanning between the 2 beams, 2 exterior beams, so smaller timber members could be used. The lifespan of that, when we were looking at this in preliminary design, I believe had a service life of 25 years. So over that time, approximately every 25 years, the timber structure for alternative 1 would need to be replaced. The existing steel structure at this point is, I believe, a hair over 100 years old. So for alternative 1, it would be the timber portion that would require replacement, as I said, in approximately 25 years. For alternative 2, that is the type of construction, the nail or stress laminated deck that would be used for that is a more robust structural system, and the average lifespan of those is typically in the 35 to 40 year range. So longer than alternative one. And then I believe the additional question you added on there was for the alternative three. For a new structure, whether it be steel or concrete, those are typically designed currently with a minimum 75-year design life. That's kind of the base mark for those for a new structure of those type.
Great, thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I think Jay can jump over to the next slide now. And so these are also part of alternative three. These were those other two structure types that were mentioned in the previous slide. And I kind of just to summarize for all three of these, they all provide a 10-foot clear width, like we mentioned, to match the adjacent trail sections. And then another thing to note that, especially with the concrete option shown on the left of the screen here and on the previous page, what's shown here, the concrete surface of the beam could serve as the walking surface. This wouldn't require any additional topping to be applied, but there are other options depending on what the preference is to match the adjacent trail sections or to make this section stand out more. Alternative options could be to apply asphalt over the concrete sections. Alternatively, for both the concrete options, a timber surface, so timber deck boards could be applied. And then for the metal truss, those typically have a timber deck to them. I'll jump to the next slide.
All right, thanks for the discussion of the bridge options there, Liam. So next we're going to move on to alternative four. Alternative four looked at the direct Main Street crossing, which would connect the west and east portions of the trail directly without having to use the existing signal. So this alternative would be built in addition to alternative one. It would construct a crosswalk directly connecting the west and east sections of the Heritage Rail Trail. It would involve ADA compliant ramps, pedestrian and vehicle signals, a second stop bar and signage for Main Street going southbound, and modifications to the existing signal. I'm gonna skip over here to the next slide so we can kind of see what I'm talking about. So what we looked at doing here, which is similar to one of the crossroads on the western portion, is we would directly put a pedestrian crossing connecting the two sections of trail, keeping the existing section here. This would allow for approximately 2 cars of length of queuing in each of the 4 lanes. We would install a second set of signals and pedestrian signals along with a stop bar that would activate at the same time when a pedestrian phase was called. This would then stop cars back here and allow crossing at the intersection and at the trail at the same time. In that analysis, we determined that not all users would feel comfortable using this crossing. The existing signalized crossing is less than 50 feet away from the current location of both the east and west rail trail. Cumulatively, the element cost exceed the current project budget. Based on the analysis, we determined that this alternative not be recommended. Alternative 5 represented the incorporation of some enhanced crossings. This would also be in addition to alternative 1. We would construct rectangular rapid flashing beacons at 2 locations, being on Spring Street and Spruce Street, which have the highest vehicle volumes of the streets being crossed by the east section of the trail. For those, I'm going to skip over to the next slide. Okay. For those of you that may not be familiar with an RFB, it consists of a set of two signs with an LED light on each side. This light is activated only when a pedestrian pushes it. At that point, the light will flash and it will alert actively drivers when a pedestrian is present. This presents a lot of good opportunities for high visualization in an area where sometimes it may not be easily seen, especially in high volume areas. So the enhanced crossings suffices the project purpose and need. The cumulative element cost exceed the current project budget, and the alternative is considered. With this, I'm going to pass it over to Jen so that she can go over the enhanced landscaping options.
Jen, you're on mute.
Sorry, I started talking without unmuting myself. So we took a look kind of at a master planning level of creating some spaces along this corridor where people that could serve as trailheads, that people could stop and, you know, maybe park their bike or have a rest. I don't have the nice list of bullet points that Jay had, but as an alternative, you know, these exceed the project budget and unfortunately are not being considered for this part of the project, but we wanted to take a look at them to make sure that whatever we're building in this phase of the project would not preclude any of these additional landscaping amenities from being built in the future should funding become available. So we took a look at 3 locations for what we're calling pocket parks, or basically like just little community parks along the corridor to consider. And just to orient, because I know this map is a little bit different than the other ones that have been presented so far. The top left of the map is Main Street. And then we go across the top to basically the Wendy's. And then you have to switch down to the bottom layer of the map, and that goes from the Wendy's down to the intersection at East Hollis Street. The 3 locations that we've identified for pocket parks are right at Main Street. We're calling it the Main Street Gateway. The second one is the what we're calling the Irish Acres Neighborhood Pocket Park. This is right along Howard Street behind the fire station. There's an existing cut through from Howard Street, north-south cut through from Howard Street down to Main Street. And because of its kind of visibility with the fire station being there and Howard Street being so close, we thought it was a valuable neighborhood connection and would be a good place for a pocket park. And the third location is the Henry Hanger Pocket Park, which is kind of the large parcel that exists all the way to the east on the site. Next slide, please. And I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit on the 3 areas. So the Main Street Gateway would be a small paved area kind of to the side where we could have bike racks, maybe some signage and some seating and maybe some special paving. And this would be a place to kind of mirror what's going on the other side of the street near City Hall. Next, please. The Irish Acres Pocket Park will again formalize the north-south connection and kind of open up view sheds between those 2 areas and create kind of a little stopping point. It's also a great way to highlight the historic neighborhood to the north and provide a gateway to that neighborhood. And it's also a great opportunity to incorporate some public art and education. Next slide. And at the Henry Hanger area, so this is an area where actually there's quite a lot of land available to create a community park. And it would serve, again, as a gateway at this end. Also being, you know, a block away from the new train station, it would be kind of a nice gateway from the train station to the rail trail. There's some really interesting kind of remnants of old rails that can be repurposed for public art. And I just showed some examples of other projects that have reused rail remnants in public areas. And it would also serve as an amenity for some of the development that is the residential development that is going on in that area. And finally, just talking about enhanced landscaping, I wanted to highlight some of the opportunities that we've identified to incorporate public art into this project. Again, as part of Alternative 6, it's not something that is being funded as part of the CMAC project, but if funding could become available, as Jay mentioned earlier, the idea of incorporating public art into the rail trail, especially in locations where the rail trail kind of blends together with some existing alleys. It's a great way to separate it. You know, there are locations where we have a privacy fence, and you know, there's interesting things you can do with the privacy slats on a privacy fence, as you can see in the middle picture here. And then also, you know, Nashua has a great culture of installing murals on adjacent buildings, and that's definitely something that brings a lot of life and vibrancy and sense of place to rail trails. So it's definitely something to be considered for additional amenities on this section of trail.
Okay, thanks, Jen, for the overview of the enhanced landscaping options. So with that, that reviewed all of the alternatives that we looked at. Based on that, and in coordination with the city, we have come to what has been selected as the proposed action. So as that, the proposed action will be alternative 1, which is the basic rail trail, which will incorporate the trail elements, the landscape elements, and the basic bridge retrofit. We are also going to select alternative 5, which would be the enhanced crossings, which will use the RFBs, and the alternative 3 will be considered as an alternate, which would be the full bridge replacement. These provide the best balance of improvements for the spectrum of all trail users. It considers the current and future trail needs and maintenance requirements. It will complement the Heritage Rail Trail West. It aligns best with the city's master plan and suffices project's purpose and need. While cumulative elements cost exceed current budget, it provides the best design for the dollars spent. Next is a review of the preliminary schedule that's been updated to today's date. So we held a local concerns meeting last October. We have the proposed action meeting, which we're holding today. We are looking to complete the engineering study in October and submit that to NHDOT. From there, once getting granted approval to move on to preliminary design, we are hoping to submit the preliminary design package in January of 2021. Once again, once approved by DOT, we are going to move into the final design and hope to get that completed in April of 2021, with the goal of advertising this project in the spring of 2021 and ultimately constructing the project in the summer or fall of 2021. With that, that concludes the presentation on the Heritage Rail Trail East proposed action. We'll now open it to questions and discussions, and I will let Julie kind of take over for that.
Great, thank you so much, Jay, Liam, Jennifer, the whole CMA team. Thank you. This was really, really great. In fact, there was a comment that they hope that the excellent presentation is posted and made available, and I will answer that it will be. We do have a project website, and we will be making both the presentation and also the recording available on the project website, which is on the city's website. There was a comment about the old steel bridge would be more in character with the rail district theme. I know that we are considering a bridge replacement depending on what we hear from the historic folks, and also, you know, what we hear at this meeting. I know that we did hear a lot at the original meeting back in October about keeping in line with the history of the neighborhood. And so that is definitely something to consider. And I really appreciate your comment, Peter. There was another question that the trail is going to terminate at East Hollis and Denton, but the overall goal ultimately is to get you know, people over to the Crown Street Park and Ride lot or future rail station. And so the question is there at least a plan to add crossing lights for East Hollis? And I don't know, Sarah, maybe you wanna jump in on that one, or?
Yes, so there is not a plan at this time. And it doesn't mean it's off the table, but there just isn't one at this time for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We have another question that was wondering if the crossings, the MUTCD W1115 multimodal crossing sign might be considered instead of the pedestrian only signage. Chris knows a whole lot about signs. I sit on a lot of committees with him and he's great. And I honestly can't pull up what that sign looks like in my head right now. So I'm gonna ask Jay if you had any considerations on that.
Sure, I believe the W1115 is the pedestrian bike sign, as this is a ped bike route. And that's something that we would consider. We usually look at those as part of the design going forward.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, I didn't scroll down far enough. Will DPW consider doing something at Temple and East Hollis? This is very busy, including rail crossing.
That's a tough question. So the short answer is the rail crossing was just improved in the last year or so. New pavement, new rail crossing in that section. And so that does open us up to the conversation. And I don't think it's off the table in the future. There isn't a specific plan right now. And I do want to say that, you know, with this longer term connection, we will certainly be looking at the pedestrian connection from the other side of East Hollis Street to 22 Crown Street through the neighborhood in the future as well. But we just haven't gotten there yet. So I do think this would be part of a larger plan that Public Works and the city's looking at. I just don't have any clear answers for you at the moment, I'm sorry to say.
Great, thank you. Yeah, people from Hollis will want to get to our rail trail. So, you know, I know we have in a previous meeting where we talked about bicycle and pedestrian paths and routes, we did hear a lot about making connections to the trail systems in other communities. That's a bigger project than this one, but it is something that the Nashua region, Hudson, sorry, Peter, that we heard at the bike ped meeting, and are looking to work with our partners in other communities, including Hudson and Hollis both, to make connections so that we can get across the river, get across the city, and get over into some of the Nashua River Rail Trail and some of the other trail systems that are west of the city. So let's see. I'm just going to read all these out loud because we have a little bit of time to answer these questions. And I think this one might be one for Jennifer. And that is an idea of the estimated cost of each pocket park. Is the creation of these parks going forward part of a long-term plan? I think everybody can read all the questions, but the park near the Henry Hangar building looks particularly nice, perhaps a great opportunity for a public-private partnership, and maybe a local landscaping company would adopt a part of the trail. Oh, that's a great idea. But Jennifer, if you could speak to the cost, please.
I can speak to the cost, and I like hearing that kind of thinking. So and these are really just generic costs because there really isn't a design yet. I'm just looking at square footage and some of the things that we threw out. But Main Street Gateway, we estimate about 32,000 would be a good budget. Irish Acres Pocket Park, about 50,000 for the budget for that. And Henry Hangar Park Trailhead would be about 150,000.
Great, thank you. So yeah, I mean, these are things that we are looking at moving forward. We, as mentioned in the presentation, we don't have the budget for them this time, but we are definitely, you know, looking for opportunities to get funding, to make some of these improvements to, you know, right now the funding that we have will build us the trail, and it will give us some lighting and fencing and you know, get us a great useful trail. And then moving forward, we would be looking to do some of the alternatives shown in the landscape elements. There is a question about do we intend to allow handicap people who use a mobility scooter to enjoy this trail? And yes, currently they can enjoy the Heritage Rail Trail East and West rather, and I would hope that they would feel comfortable using the Heritage Rail Trail East as well. And let's see, what about a Main Street crossing similar to the Main Street crossing at Peddler's Daughter? And I believe that's referencing we do have the rapid flashing beacon there at the bridge. And I think, and I think Jay spoke to this, and I'll let him speak as well after I get my 2 cents in. But one of the issues with putting a crossing at Main Street is that it's so close to the existing crossing. It presents somewhat of a danger, a safety issue. And Jay, maybe you want to speak to that a little more.
Sure. If the reference to the Peddler's Daughter, if that is an RFB crossing, that would not be able to be installed in such close proximity to that signalized crossing in that manner. It's like Julie said, it probably poses more issue imposing that crossing than you know, than using the existing crossing. So with that crossing being so close and having a signalized crossing, it just makes sense to have that location.
Yeah, so I think the idea is, you know, if we can guide people to use the existing crossing, it's a little less confusing. It's a little more clear for, you know, vehicles making a right turn onto Main Street from East Hollis. And then, you know, if they had a pedestrian right there with the right turn on red, they may not see that pedestrian until they're right there. And, you know, with the multiple lanes going across, again, it can be difficult to see pedestrians in 4 lanes of traffic. Are security cameras being considered along any parts of the trail? Yeah, we are looking into that, and we have heard that and actually got some information. We have some security cameras going up in other locations in the city, and have learned from that experience. And there are some businesses that already have security cameras. Sarah, do you want to add?
Just that on the security cameras that we have been able to install on the west side, in large part we're in partnership with businesses along the way, because we don't have a great monitoring system, but we were able to partner with our partners along the trail, and that has been a successful system. So certainly is something we're looking at, but it would probably be looking at a partnership model again.
Great, thank you so much. Does the city have a security camera provider? We don't. I mean, we do have security cameras at different locations, but I'm not sure that we have a dedicated provider.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it depends on where, because we have to put projects out to bid so often. We don't tend to have one specific one, but in certain areas we might. And so we've had better experiences with ones than the others, and that will evolve as we get closer to actual construction with this project.
Great, thank you. Peter noted that the pocket park at Henry Hangar is important given that they have lost a skate park and are about to lose the ball field. I know that we've heard similar things when we had a meeting at the East Hollis Street, Bridge Street intersection. We also have an active project there, and we have heard about the loss of some of the amenities in that area, and are trying to do our best to get funding to add them back in. What does the fire department do behind their building that requires security fencing. That's kind of their outside break room, I guess, for lack of a better word. They have picnic tables, they have a barbecue grill. It's just a place for them to relax. I mean, they have a tough job and can really use some of that space to enjoy nature outside of the building. So that is a space that they actively use. All right, do we have any other questions? And the lighting will help discourage panhandlers. Again, yeah, that is, as Jennifer mentioned, that is the way the lighting works is pretty nice. I like how it comes on and off, and I know panhandlers aren't, that's not really speaking to that issue, but the fact that it does indicate when somebody might be back there and perhaps shouldn't be, I think is a great thing. So yeah, thank you, Jennifer, for coming up with that great design. All right, I'm gonna ask again if there are any last questions before we end this webinar. We will be accepting comments for the next 10 days. So that's up through October 2nd. And that's in part because of the change in having to do this webinar instead of having an in-person meeting. That is a change that DOT has requested that we do for these types of projects. So if you do think of anything after this webinar, please feel free to either call me or send me an email. The information is up on the screen for both my office number and email address. So if you do think of something, please let us know. We do really want to take your opinions and input into the design as we move forward and get this project to where it's finally built and constructed and able to be enjoyed. So I think if there are no final questions, thank you all for participating. This was really a great session and really appreciate your input. Sarah, do you want to close out with any words?
No, thank you all. And we're looking forward to moving this to something real for next year. So fingers crossed. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.